Hello and welcome back to the Purposeful Shift. Today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by the lovely Sue Tansley, or Mrs. T. Sue and I have met because we are both taking a master's course together, which is an MA in Creative Practice offered by the Make Institute. Sue is an artist, a photographer, a filmmaker and educator, and has recently worked through quite a significant purposeful shift in her life. So I am really excited that Sue is here today to talk about some of the things that are happening for her right now and the shift that she's making, and why now is the right time for that particular shift for Sue. So thank you ever so much, Sue, for joining me today. So before we talk about what you're doing now, can you take us back to who you were before this shift to become Sue, the artist for herself?
Yeah, I was art teacher and specifically a head of department, in fact, a director of department in a private independent HMC school, running a flagship, amazing department with incredible results and happy children and senior leaders that were very, very happy with me and respected by my peers, respected by the children, respected by other heads of department and other teachers in other regional schools, with quite a, wide-reaching reputation, really, for doing great things in education. So, yeah, it all sounds terribly positive, doesn't it?
It does. It's left me thinking, so why the change? So what was the nudge that kind of first led you to thinking that something needed to change? Because it does all sound very good and very lovely.
Yes. Well, there are a lot of satisfying things about the job that I was doing, but the one thing that was very unsatisfying, which is quite a major thing, is that the work-life balance was zero. There was no balance with life. It was all work, and I was disappearing. I ceased to exist. I had a status, but there was no Sue, and Sue was disappearing with each year. And as you probably know, since COVID, independent schools have really struggled. And a lot of them are on their knees financially. And so a lot of cuts have been made. And those cuts, they put a lot of pressure on the middle managers, which I was. And so you are forced to tell your team things that they've got to do with less resources, less time, more children. You are being told by your senior managers that that's what you've got to do and you have no choice. And by the way, here's some more admin for you to do. And here's no extra time to do it in. And could you do some extra lessons as well? And you're going to have to support your team. And at the same time, that coincides with a very important time in a woman in her 50s life, which is that you are dealing with perimenopause, you are dealing with menopause. And in my case, and as I think is in the case of many others, you are also dealing with pressures from your family. In my case, it was my mum, who has been a widow since 2007. And she, in 2024, had a catastrophic fall that meant that she had to go to hospital. And that was a lot of pressure upon me. I am unable to delegate those kind of things to my only sister who has some mental health issues. So it all falls on my shoulders to sort that kind of stuff out. So we were able to sort it out. She is doing great now. She's about to have her 84th birthday. She's now got metal rods in her spine and she's running around with her walker and, moving fantastically. But it was difficult. And at the time I had a member of staff that was struggling and she really wanted to leave. We got a new member of staff and through no fault of her own, her life interrupted with work quite a lot. And that put all the pressure back on me. So where I thought the new member of staff would take place of the other one that was struggling, actually it was much worse because, this lady had a lot of pressures outside of work too. And so it's all falling on my plate. I had a very successful appraisal where they're all saying you're doing a lovely job. And, and I said to my principal, if I'm on your sofa in a year's time, it'll be just before my 55th birthday. And I'll be here because I'll be handing in my notice, because this is no life. I can do it, but I shouldn't. No one should have to work the kind of hours that I'm doing and under the pressure that I'm doing, for the amount of money that I'm being paid and for the support I don't have. I know you love what I do. I know that the children love what I do. I know the parents love what I do. But at what cost? The cost is too high. The cost means my husband never sees me. I'm never in my home. I'm always tired. I'm always thinking of too many things. And what I also felt quite strongly, and had felt for about 2 or 3 years, was that I was probably also dealing with ADHD and autism, which was being harder to cope with as my estrogen depleted. And it was just, it wasn't working for me, and so things happened, things came to a head. And I would say, looking back now, that I experienced what they now call ADHD burnout. It wasn't a mental breakdown. I didn't get that far. But I had to basically say, I'm going to follow my GP's advice and not go back to school. And so I was forced to make that shift, because I needed to save myself. And so at the time when the school was asking for redundancies, and I was feeling this way, I just said, you know what? How about me? And they went, yeah, that's okay. We can do that. And they were very kind in many ways. There were some other things going on that weren't kind. But, they enabled me to escape. And it does feel like an escape. I started, there's a certain amount of grief saying goodbye to a 20-year career, and then going, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. I don't know what I do. Who am I? And doing a lot of looking back and going, and the first thing I needed to do was just paint. So that's what I did. I just painted, because that's always been my go-to. It's always been my savior. So I started off by painting to heal my heart.
I love that. You painted to heal your heart.
Mm.
And it sounds like there was an awful lot on your plate. And it sounds like it was a really difficult decision to be able to walk away from something that you clearly loved and that you're clearly incredibly good at, and everybody loved you for what you did, especially after 20 years of doing that thing, to then be brave enough and courageous enough to say, actually, I need to put myself first.
Yeah.
And that's a really incredible thing to have done. And I imagine it must have been very difficult.
Yes. I was a very different person in June 2025 to the person that's talking to you now. That was that was hard.
Absolutely. Did anything almost stop you? I know you said, you took your GP's advice and that was clearly the right thing.
I could have not taken my GP's advice, and at first I didn't. I was like, oh, well, no, I'm fine. I'll just do a little working from home, and I could find a way through this. And then I was like, well, if I sign myself off, I can still do some online. And they're like, that's not quite how it works, but yes, in theory, legally, you are allowed. So, I still felt such a duty to the kids. It was. The art calendar is quite heavy in the summer, and so it was a terrible time to take away the person who runs everything. But it was and it's a very hard decision to make, because I was the main breadwinner. I'm the person who earns the most money and is the reason why we've got this lovely home and these 2 lovely boxes, and are able to go into COVID back in 2020, basically thinking, well, we're living in paradise, so this is great for us, But that was all provided because of my job. Darren, my husband, is lovely, but I chose to be married to an incredible man who put actually his ethics before money. And so, he's always done terribly worthy jobs, but they're not very well paid. And he's an incredible person, but, he wasn't the person that enabled us to get this cottage.
Yeah, I think that feels like a conversation for another time to explore Darren's incredible ethics. And because everybody listening to this cannot see your beautiful boxer dogs, and I've seen how beautiful your girls are, I would just like to share with everybody how absolutely stunning Sue's beautiful boxer dogs are. So I would definitely want to be at home with them during COVID. That sounds like my idea of bliss, apart from everything else that's going on in the world. So what would you say has really changed for you internally since you have made that shift from June last year to today, and you sitting here as Sue, the artist, with me right now?
Internally, there's more calm, but equally during this time, I pushed back at the doctors and said, that ADHD diagnosis that we put off, let's not put it off anymore, because I think that it weighed in on what was happening. And so right now, my brain is kind of processing that, the recent rather late diagnosis of being a neurodivergent brain, when I thought that my brain was probably a bit, but turns out it's quite a lot. and you're like, oh, okay. And open conversations that I've had with people that are neurotypical, and they're going, no, that's not how people think. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm finding my happy again. And one of the things that was really revelatory as I got into the autumn. So I was just painting sort of from my visceral gut, but it was a cathartic kind of thing. They weren't intended for anyone other than me. And I decided to apply for this master's, not for a qualification, but for accountability and support and structure. Because obviously, if you've been leading your life with a timetable for the last 20 years, I was like, no timetable. And so I applied for this master's, but I applied for it not actually knowing what I was going to put in the proposal. And, and I started kind of looking at my old artwork and just going through that and thinking, who was that person? Who was that person that wrote that dissertation, that did those artworks, that was actually an artist for 2 or 3 years after you graduated and, then bottled it because found rejection just too hard? Who was that artist? Who was that person that had these crazy ideas? Where did they even come from? And I didn't really think about it until I had enough space in my mind to process at night. It always happens at night. A really beautiful day that I'd had, and a really beautiful book that I'd found, and a really beautiful television series that I'd watched a few episodes of, which was Riot Women by Sally Wainwright. And the three all went into a pot, and they got all mixed together and came out as this revelation of a visualization of a series of art pieces that my brain hadn't done that for 30 years. It hadn't visualized an art piece for literally 3 decades. Basically since the moment that I started being PAYE, i.e. working, all the time and being paid by somebody else and, and having that security and that safety, it turned off my creative brain. And that, the idea part, the sort of, the eureka moments, the few that I had, I was giving to children in their classes. I was giving to my boss when I worked in commercial photography. And so what happened in the autumn was I got that brain back, and there it was going, you could do this. I was like, but I don't know how to do that. And it was like, nor do I, but let's find out. It was just brilliant, because then I, went and found one of those many emails that the Institute had sent going, you really need to do your proposal. Because they kept sending them. Like, please do your proposal. And they're like, yeah, I do realise I haven't done it. And so I was able to just, I don't know if my proposal was anything like anybody else's, but it was pretty huge. I sent in all sorts of stuff, and yeah, and then they came back and said, "Do you want an interview?" And I did the interview, and now we're on this journey, and I'm doing it. I'm figuring out how to actually make the pieces that I saw in my imagination at 1:00 in the morning after a perfect day and a really lovely book and a really fantastic TV series that just kind of was enough ingredients that it created this alchemy. And it was really, but I wouldn't have been able to let that in. There wouldn't have been time. I'd have woken up thinking about a child's project or some admin that I needed to do or somebody that I needed to message at work. I wouldn't have woken up seeing a piece of art. That wouldn't have been there. So that's a major sort of like, oh, there she is. Yeah, I haven't seen you for a long time. And that's quite nice. It's quite nice to know that I'm talking about her in the third person, but that my creative self was still there, and that creative self that's for me and not for others. And that was in my statement that I sent to my colleagues. I said, it's time for me to give my creativity back to myself instead of giving it away. Because you do that as an art teacher. You give away your creativity every day, every minute. So yeah, that's a major shift. Yeah.
I love that
nice.
You've explained it so clearly that I can almost picture you putting all of these ideas into this kind of melting pot and coming out with your big vision. And I think for me, when I've explored my creativity in the past, and I used to say I'm not a creative person, but actually I think I am. I just think I maybe haven't found my one thing that I've maybe not stuck with for long enough to actually develop some real skill in. But that's when I'm happiest. I think I've discovered recently that when I'm doing lino cut or printmaking or building something out of wood or doing DIY in the house, I'm not necessarily things I would say I'm a real creative, but actually that is when I'm happiest and that is when I smile the most and I feel best. Like you say, when you're working for somebody else or delivering creativity for somebody else, it's just not the same. And I love the way you've kind of shared that for you, because I think a lot of people could probably relate to how you were feeling in finding yourself again and your creativity for you rather than for somebody else. So thank you, Sue, for sharing that so beautifully. So my next question for you is, well, I've seen your website and I've seen how incredibly talented you are. And when I was learning photography, I just have to say this, I would have loved to have come to one of your workshops and the way that you put things together. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage everybody after this, after you've listened to this, to check out Sue's Instagram. And loads of inspiration there. But I suppose I wanted to ask, since you've had this time now to kind of explore creativity for you, because you're so talented in so many different areas, what surprised you the most, would you say, about doing what you want to do for you and nobody else now?
Well, what I tried to do when I first would kind of let loose was I just started to say yes to things that I would never. I'm not spontaneous. Okay, I'm a planner. I'm a researcher and a planner. I do lots and lots of research, lots and lots of planning. I don't buy an appliance unless I've read several reviews. I don't go anywhere until I've looked up all the possibilities of what it might be like. But I went a bit spontaneous, and that's very, very unlike me. So the first thing I did, I already mentioned, which were these sort of like very visceral paintings. I then went for a walk with a dear friend of mine who's a musician, and that walk resulted in me offering to do music videos. I'd never done a music video, but I taught hundreds of music videos. So I just said to her, "What?" And she's like, "You don't do music videos?" And I was like, "But I've taught hundreds of them. So if we take the teenager out of the equation, how hard could it be? I'm not a teenager. I'm the one helping them." And she was like, "But I need them really quickly." And I was like, "I work really fast." It's the only speed I know is fast.
Yeah.
So I made 3 music videos and then put them together as a short film with my dear friend Holly, who's an incredible musician. And we laughed a lot. It was great fun. I needed and wanted to give her creative ownership over her own videos. So she's like the director, but I'm the one telling her how to do it. So I said, see me as your cinematographer, and I'll tell you what's possible. And we can brainstorm together how we can thread your 3 songs of your EP into one thing. But you tell me what it is that you see in your head, and I'll tell you how we can do that. And so, we worked it together. And we just laughed a lot. Holly was at art school with me. But I say she's a full-time musician these days, and she's made some really brave, creative decisions about her life, like selling her home so she could go, record an album and things like that. But so that was a surprise because I have never made videos before, and it wasn't too much of a learning curve technically, but it's just applying yourself to something that you know the theory of because you've taught hundreds of children how to do it, but you've never actually been the person doing it. And so, there were things that were challenging and there were things that I would have done differently if I knew more about it. But that was a surprise. I also volunteered to carry a fish down the Lowestoft seafront for an art festival, so I was saying yes to things like that. I said, well, actually signing up to applying for the Masters was a spontaneous decision. I didn't share it with anybody. I was just like, I'm just going to apply for a Masters. There's lots of other things that I was doing during that time that were a spontaneous me, which was about me just saying, well, I just need to say yes. I just need to. So when people say, can you do this? And you're like, yes. Would you like to do this? Yes. Have you ever done this before? No. Would you like to do it? Yes. and so that isn't me. I mean, my sister and my husband would laugh at the concept of me ever being spontaneous. I hate surprises. Just no. I want to know what's happening. Yeah.
So spontaneous Sue has well and truly surprised you over the last 9 months.
Yeah.
She's crept up on you and she's here. Is she here to stay?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know because I still have moments where I'm just like, I'm just going to plan that. I mean, I've just had to buy a dishwasher, and I signed up for a witch magazine.
Before you bought the dishwasher.
Research dishwashers. So I think there are some things that will still remain I'm just going to plan that, research that and look that up and, before I actually jump in. But I think artistically, creatively, one of the things that's wonderfully surprising about these pieces that I'm prototyping is that I don't know how to do them and I don't know how they're going to come out when I start them, which is why I've been time-lapse videoing them because I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I'm just like, right, so here we go. And then I start mixing up the colours and I'm like, well, that's a surprising colour. I wasn't expecting that, but okay, let's put that on. and it is entirely, so there is a certain amount of structure underneath it in that I've made some decisions maybe on the canvas or the surface that I'm going to put something on, and I'm combining photography with paint, so I've already decided which photographs are there. But then what happens when I allow my emotions to take charge? I'm not in control of that. That just happens. It's stream of consciousness painting. It's it's a type of painting that feels more like performance rather than that I'm necessarily thinking about what it's going to look like at the end. It's about the process. And certainly at this stage, it's very much a searching and seeking type thing where I'm just trying to figure out how these paintings are going to be made. So, by the time I've made all my prototypes, I don't know how many there'll be, because I'm just going to keep going until I figure out how to do them. And I haven't figured that out yet. And that's kind of fun.
I love that. And I think that feeling that you're painting not for the end destination, but for the experience in the journey of the painting, and how fun and freeing that must be. I think I'm partly planner, maybe not to the same degree that I would buy a witch magazine. I'm not that, I probably wouldn't research that much. But I think in my head, if I was trying to create a painting, I would probably be starting from what I wanted the finished result to look like, rather than just enjoying the process. And I think I would actually find that really challenging. So I really love the idea that you're fully embracing that. And that's part of you on this journey that you're on right now.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Love it. So, Sue, what are you really excited about for the rest of this year, 2026?
I'm really excited about this endeavour, but I'm also really excited about some of the other little things that keep popping up. So I've got a meeting later on with one of my ex-pupils from my first school, who's now a fully grown-up woman, and she wants some help curating an exhibition. And she thought of me because she knew I was no longer teaching, and she was like, I thought you'd be the right person. I thought, yeah, I love that. Yeah, I am the right person for that, and I want to do it. That sounds great.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing some videoing for a really lovely lady who happens to live in the next village over, and I did some photography for her. She did a shout out on local Facebook group, asking for a photographer for something that sounds simple, but it wasn't simple, because basically what she had was drawings in beautiful frames, beautifully framed, very expensively framed. And the drawings were on really dark paper, and the glass wasn't very far away from the paper. So effectively what she had was a bunch of mirrors. And she wanted to know if anybody could photograph them. And I said, well, look, I'm only in the next village. I'll come and have a look. So I had a look, and I was just about to throw in the towel and say, we're going to take them out the frames. I can't see how we can photograph them. They're basically mirrors. And I had this revelation, I don't know where it came from, where I had a scarf around my neck, and I just kind of held it up in the air like this, like above my head. So I was a big, like, dark shape. I was wearing a dark jumper. The scarf was dark. The only thing that was pale was my face. And I held it. I'm literally exactly 90 degrees from the picture. I'm standing perpendicular to it. And by holding up the scarf, I'm blocking out the picture's ability to reflect the rest of the room. I'm thinking, this is physics here. The only thing that's reflecting is my face. So if I can block any light things from seeing into the pictures, then I can photograph them. So if I bring my black backdrop, my camera is already black. My tripod's a little shiny. Might have to do something about the legs. As long as I'm wearing black, as long as I'm not in shot, as long as everything, the light is natural light from the side, I don't have to invade our home with loads of lights. I don't have to take the pictures out. And so I met that, and I was like, I figured it out. I figured it out. It's it's physics. And so it's little things like that pop up in my schedule. And I just think, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds fun. And so I end up with these really varied, peculiar weeks, which every week is completely different. And that wouldn't be happening if I was still in my job. I wouldn't. They are varied, of course. But I'd be getting up early and bang on the treadmill and deadlines. And here the pace is set by me, and there's these really lovely people that I keep meeting. And, the lady who needed the photography, she wrote the national curriculum for art and design, Key Stage 3.
Wow.
She wrote it. She's the one who wrote it. When I learnt to be a teacher, that was my Bible. She's the one who wrote it. And I'm like, you're here in this village, and that's an incredible thing to meet someone like that and get to spend a day with her while I'm photographing her beautiful drawings and find out about her life and her journey. So there's lots of little things like that that have come up, and other ex-pupil that got in touch and wanted help with photography for her marketing business, and just bits and pieces that are really interesting and a joy to do. And I can help friends when they need help. And I helped a friend go to a hospital appointment. I wouldn't be able to do that if I was in my job. You'd be like, oh, I wish I could help, but I can't, I'd be like, can I help you? Can I drive you to the hospital? And so you don't have that worry. It's like, that'd be great, So, yeah.
Oh, it sounds lovely. And it sounds like the freedom and the flexibility that allows you to explore things that make you happy.
Mm.
And having that variety in your week, certainly, I know for me, would make me happy rather than kind of rinse and repeat every single day. Yeah, you're certainly selling the lifestyle to me, Sue. It sounds fabulous.
Mm.
So I guess I've got a couple more questions. Next one's a bit tricky. What's your dream?
Oh, what's my dream? Pay off my mortgage. No,
Okay,
it shouldn't
that's
be
fair.
about money. What is my dream? I mean, probably at this point in my life, the dream aspect. I know when we were on our masters, I came up with some story about New York and a hotel and stuff like that. Actually, I just want to be at home. I really do. The best days I have are where I'm here and I'm pottering in my studio, and my husband and I go for a lovely afternoon walk with the dogs. We cook together, and preferably it's a nice sunny day and it's warm enough for us to sit outside in the evening after we get back from, our walk and things like that. And I've embraced peace as I've got older, in a way that the me that grew up on the outskirts of London and loved busyness and social life and stuff like that wouldn't recognise. That version of me that loved to nip to London, and go to loud, noisy pub and things like that, and go to a loud gig, and she wouldn't recognise the me that's like, I'm just going to put some jeans on and some wellies and go for a walk. And then I'm going to go in my studio and I'm just going to paint for a bit. And that's my day. And, well, are you seeing anybody? No, I'm not seeing any humans other than the one that lives here. So my dream is to be able to have that life without guilt and without having to make excuses for why I want that life. That's the dream, is that I am at ease to be able to do that. I'm not quite there yet, because I'm not at ease having that life, because I'm not making very much money. And we have overheads and we have pressures and things like that. And so there's still this fear and this doubt that I won't be able to have this life and I will have to interrupt it with things that make money, because that's how the world works. So, it's that I know what the dream is. I don't know how to necessarily achieve it yet.
Yet being the key thing. Yet. Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking then, it made me think about something a friend said to me once, and she's also a teacher, not an art teacher, she's an English teacher. And she described life as a book, and that we each have these chapters. And where it was coming from when she described it to me was that her marriage was ending, which was her choice. And she described it as, she's had this wonderful chapter with her husband. Together they've raised 3 beautiful children. They're very happy, but that chapter's coming to an end for them. Yeah. And I really loved that analogy. And I try to think about life now in terms of these chapters. And so another question that I'm just throwing at you, Sue, if your life now and you were thinking about it as a book, what do you think you might name this chapter? Totally on the spot. Really mean.
I don't know, but the paintings I was working on when I was dealing with how I was feeling in last summer, I called them the warrior women. And that was just my name for them. And it's because it's how I felt. I felt like I was battling with the world, my feelings about the world, and they were on a journey. I was on a journey. And so if I've had that battle and I'm now into the next chapter, that was the end of that chapter. That was the grand battle before the calm afterwards. And this is like a new beginning. It's a new hope. Thank you, George Lucas. But no, let's not have a nerdy Star Wars reference. But it
whatever floats your boat.
Always been a bit of a nerd for sci-fi. But it is this new chapter that is unfolding itself. So it's an unfolding new beginning. So in some ways it's an unfolding beginning, where you're unfolding things that some of them are familiar and you go, oh, hello, you, I've seen you for a while. And some of them are totally new and you're like, oh, I don't know what that is. But it is this sort of revealing of a new path. So we could call it the unfolding.
I like that. Love that, in fact. Thanks, Sue. Sorry, I totally put you on the spot there.
That's all right.
And it just came to me and I was curious to see where your brilliant mind went with that question. So I've got one more for you. I kind of stolen this idea from Diary of a CEO. And I didn't want to steal it directly, but I kind of borrowed it and applied it in a slightly different way. So I'm going to ask this same question to every guest who comes on the show. So the question is, if one woman is listening right now who feels the nudge and wants to make a change or a shift in their life, but they feel perhaps a little bit scared to act, what would you want her to know?
Well, I used to say it to my team all the time. You are invaluable and essential to your family and yourself. And you owe no employer that part of you. They don't own you. They don't need you. You are not invaluable to them. They will replace you in a heartbeat. So if at any point the balance in your life shifts to the point whereby you think that job needs you, then you've got it round the wrong way, because the people at home that really need you, that really can't function without you, they're losing out on the you that you're giving to work. So when the balance goes that way, you need to step back and look at your life and go, it's not working.
I think they're really powerful words. Thank you. I very much appreciate you giving up your time to come here and to talk to me today. I have loved talking to you. I think you are such a brilliant, incredible lady. And I know that there's probably many more future conversations we could have. And I would particularly love to explore the ADHD side of things with you at some point later in time. But thank you ever so much for being here today. I really do appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts. And thank you for your wonderful advice and sharing your story so openly and so genuinely to inspire others. So thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for joining me today for this special episode with the absolutely incredible Sue Tansley. The Purposeful Shift will be released every week, so please look out for future episodes. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing so far, please feel free to hit subscribe or share this with a friend who might also enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you soon.